Yeah, Premier League football's great and all that. Best team wins match, team who wins match gets 3 points, team who gets most points in season wins league. It's all very meritocratic and all that. Boring. I think we can all agree that football would be much more fun if you were actively punished for winning and rewarded for being total rubbish. So a couple of days ago on stream, we were discussing the possibility of a league system where if you lose matches, you get more points than you do if you win or draw matches, and the inevitable chaos that would ensue throughout an entire league system with those set of rules implemented. I'm actually live right now over on Twitch as this video goes live, so you can hang out over there after you've watched it. So why 6 points for a loss, 4 points for a draw, and 2 points for a win instead of just flipping things directly? And the simple answer is the editor basically will not let you. We've tried several different things to get it directly flipped, but there's a lot of different parameters which break and cause all sorts of issues when we try to do that for some reason, so we had to go with 6, 4, and 2. We did actually find a sort of workaround that let us directly flip it so that you had 0 points for a win, 1 for a draw, and 3 for a defeat. However, it threw up so many different kinds of bugs and broke constantly that it just simply wasn't worth doing. So maybe we'll check back in on that in a future video if we do manage to find a working fix for it. But for now, these are the parameters that we're working with, so expect to see some inordinately high points totals getting relegated. And also a massive shout out to friend of the channel, Hadrian, who did almost all of the legwork to make this actually possible. And you're going to see over the next few months several videos which include a lot of the advanced rules editing stuff from the pre-game editor. And we decided that it'd be fun to actually show a little bit of how we make these so that you guys can learn along with me as I learn from Hadrian how a lot of this stuff works. So before we truly get into the chaos, I just want to give you a mini little brief tutorial on how you actually do this yourself, should you want to. But don't worry if you don't want to mess around with stuff like that. There is a link in the description to a fully working version of the database that you can mess around with at your leisure. But if you do want to build this from scratch yourself using the advanced rules, here is very briefly how you do it. Firstly, load the editor. No surprises there. Then, of course, you want to make sure that you've loaded the database as well and everything is fresh and blank. Then go up to add nation rules here. Then in this box, select the nation that you want to mess with. In our case, it's England because that's what we're going to be using today. And make sure that you select the bottom option here so that it just adds stuff to an existing structure. Then hit finish and you're good to go. Then, before you do anything else, go into rules and hit convert to advanced rules. This is super important that you don't do anything until you click this button. Then hit yes and you're good to go. Now we're in the advanced part of the editor where all the good stuff lives. This is where you can change some absolutely outrageous things that you might not have thought possible. So for now, we're going to go Premier League, which we've already got selected. Premier League down here. Stages, most importantly, then stage 0, then into league settings. And this is one of the many menus where the rabbit hole of outrageousness lives, as you can already see some very interesting options, which we're not going to mess around with today, but that might be for another video. But for now, we want to look at points for a win, points for a draw, and points for a defeat, which we can switch on. And you'll see here down at the bottom, it gives you the parameters for the minimum and maximums that you can set for these. Now, as I said, in some of our tests, we were actually able to break these and let it display this in reverse. However, it didn't really verify properly. Even when it did, it caused all kinds of bugs and issues. So it's just not worth it for today. This one works and we know it's fun. So we're going to change points for a defeat to 6, points for a draw to 4, and points for a win to the minimum we can set it to, which is 2. This just allows the teams to be rewarded for 3 times more when they lose a game than when they win. Also, draws are going to be quite valuable as well with this setup, I suspect, but it just means winning matches is not going to behoove you. No, not at all. And that is all of the actual editing part of this done. So the next thing you want to do is, of course, save this. So go up to save your editor data here and save it however you would like. Then you want to go into rules and go to test rules. And obviously, if you've done all of these, you want to select all. Sometimes it's good to verify them all anyway, just to make sure. That'll take a little while it goes through. When it comes to actually using the data file, when you start your save, just go to career here. Up here, it will appear. As long as you verified it in the latest version of the game, you'll be able to find your file down here. My one that we're using today is called England Flip Points. Just hit that, hit confirm, and then you're good to go once you hit advanced setup, and then your save file should just start like normal. Because today we've taken things a little bit further. We've actually implemented this same system across the entirety of the English League system to provide for maximum chaos. So that's the set of file we're going to be using for today. Let's get in and show you how this actually works. As I'm going to walk you through how this is going to look over the course of the season, but worry not, as later in the video, we've got a simulation that is 40 years into the future where this same stuff has affected the entirety of the English leagues, and therefore maximum chaos has no doubt ensued. But I haven't actually looked at the results of that simulation yet, so we get to find out together, and I'm very excited about that. The save file for that will also be linked down in the description so that you can also peruse through the 40-year sim and find anything magical in there that you want at your own leisure. I've said leisure too many times, and I've also said it weirdly. It's leisure. As for what I'm actually expecting to happen in this, I think it should be fairly straightforward. teams like Manchester City are going to win a lot, and therefore they're probably going to get relegated first season. Can't wait for them to sack Pep Guardiola because they're in the relegation zone despite being unbeaten at the halfway stage of the season. So if anything, being just a little bit mid is probably your best route to success, I'd say. But here we have it. All 6 tiers and all 7 leagues of the English football pyramid that are in the base game are all switched on. So basically, we're just going to sim like a couple of months so I can show you how this starts to pan out. And it's going to get a little bit mad. So I didn't want to go too far in straight off the bat so you could get an idea of why teams are where they are. So let's just look at the Premier League for now because it is affecting all of them. But you can see that Southampton, top of the league currently, 28 points from 5 matches, 4 defeats, 1 draw in there. Good work. So of course, that's 24 points from their 4 defeats plus the 4 points from that draw. And they're currently top of the Premier League with a -7 goal difference. On the other end of the spectrum, you'll see Chelsea down at the very bottom with 10 points from 4 matches, given that they've managed to win 3 of them. So really, drawing and defeats are the way that you go. It's weird seeing Villa in the relegation zone, actually. A very strong start to the season has affected them quite poorly, and hilariously, Manchester City still somehow in the Champions League places. They've already sussed out what to do. I swear to God, if they manage to win the Premier League with reversed points, then I think it might be over for us. But you can see that that same thing applies all the way down, as Swansea and Luton actually killing it in the Championship. There was Swansea have lost all 6 games. They're on for an absolute rocket of a season here to the Premier League with you. So obviously with the World Cup slowing the simulation down massively soon to happen, I figured we just sort of stop here because you kind of get the idea. City have now at least reverted to type, with their 10 wins on the board, putting them firmly in the relegation zone with 48 points. I am curious, though, to see the maximum number of points that we see a team get, because a team could have a genuinely gopping season and potentially end up with like 200 points, because if they lost like 40 games, I'm just saying, there's well over 200 points on the board for a team potentially there. But Brighton with a good chance of winning the Premier League this season. Palace also having quite a bad time of it too, with just the 1 win in their first 16 matches. Good lord. So I think we're now going to have a little look at the 40-year sim and get really stuck into the long-term effects of this on English football were this absolute menace to somehow come to fruition. But I think this is where things are certainly going to take a turn for the rather interesting. So the first thing I'm noticing, this is just the first thing I'm seeing here, is Russell Olympic being mentioned. A team I'm familiar with vaguely, but the fact that it says he has experience with Russell Olympic and West Brom, it's a strange combination. So I don't even know where to start here. Premier League. Hey, look, it's West Brom. West Brom are massive, mate. I don't know what to tell you. There's Russell Olympic, 16th in the Premier League, Russell Olympic, doing a lovely job. So who do we recognise the most out of these, I suppose? West Brom are by far the most noteworthy team in this bunch, I would say. Leyton Orient, they're League 2, I think, in real life. So there's probably the most noteworthy names in there. The fact that West Brom are still 7th in the Premier League. How have they managed that? I told you, the key was to just be mid. Can we also talk about how the Premier League is now the 36th best league in Europe and is now ranked below the Azerbaijani Premier League? England's coefficients are going to be absolutely destroyed. And not to mention the fact that they only have 4 European places. Oh, I love that West Brom have actually got one of them as well. What if there's even been any repeat winners? Or is it just like you win the league and therefore you crap the next year? Gateshead somehow managed to be so bad that they won back-to-back Premier Leagues. Where do we even start? I want to find out what's going on with West Brom. West Brom's situation. Where have they been all around this? Oh my Gideon. Okay, so David Kasama is currently the manager of West Brom. So over the last 40 years, they started off in the Championship and incredibly remained in the Championship for the first 15 years of this save. I told you, just be inoffensive and mid and you'll be fine. They eventually did have a slightly better season and ended up going down to League 1 and then struggled a little bit there, got down to League 2. I don't know, they sort of flipped it around a little bit and all of a sudden got back into the Premier League again. I think they must be the team that have fallen the least out of all of this. I'm curious to see where the sort of traditional big 6 are. Whether they're even still in the Football League at all is a different question, because they're always going to have that money to try and push themselves back up again. So we'll definitely take a look at that. You can see it went off the rails very quickly. Leicester City, actually, ironically winning the Premier League first season. Fulham with a runner-up spot, you'll love to see it. Reading, then Accrington Stanley, then Barrow. Accrington Stanley had a couple of particularly poor seasons in the Premier League, as did Barrow. It almost seems like a team wins it. In fact, look at this. So Reading win it, then follow up the next year with a second. Accrington Stanley win it, then come second. Barrow win it, then come second. Wealdstone break the trend, though. Taunton, already up into the top flight. Zealand will be pleased. Cheshunt in there too, and it just went off the rails from that point onwards, really. Even the Police won it one season. Sting will be mighty happy about that. Very few multiple-time winners, though, but luckily Folkestone and Gateshead were able to be bad enough for back-to-back seasons to win the league. I can't imagine there's been a great deal of success on the European stage for England. In fact, I'm very curious to see where England are on the coefficients for European games. 29th! It turns out if you want to build a nation and you want to get rid of England, potentially, the best thing you can do is just completely break their points Why didn't I just do this on my MTK save? It would have been so much easier. Yeah, it's not gone super well for England there, as they sit right next to flag friend here, Georgia. And it seems to only be getting worse. Actually, no, lately, they've been better in recent years, it seems, but it's not gone super well for them. What if that's thrown up any weird winners of the Champions League, potentially? I suspected it was just going to basically exclude the English sides from it, which is exactly what has happened. City won it first season, ironically, just like in real life, but after that, not a dicky bird. No English side to be seen for a very long time. Milan got a cheeky one in there as well. God, PSG won a lot of them, and also came second in a lot of them. Monaco and Real Sociedad, surprisingly, to see them in finals, which is kind of sick. Any surprise winners? Porto with a cheeky one, a couple of them in fact, but not really, no. Just no real surprises there at all. I suspect the Europa League is a very similar story. Back-to-back wins in it for Inter in there as well. It is just weird seeing like the list of winners for these without a single English side present in even on the runner-up spot for any of these. Any chance of a Conference League? Liverpool won a cheeky Conference League in there too, as did Aston Villa a few years into the save. Man United actually got to the Conference League final in 2028. God knows what division they were in when that happened. Very much looking forward to finding that out. Okay, that's enough of that. We need to firmly figure out what's going on in the rest of the English leagues. And I also need to check in on Manchester United in this season, because there's no way they reach the Conference League while being in the top flight. In fact, I'm willing to bet that United were actually in League One when they got to the Conference League final. It has to be the case, because they'll still have good players for the Cups. So we know all about the Premier League. We know what kind of madness is going on there. Is there any big names in the Championship? Okay, well, Merthyr Tydfil, or I think it's just Merthyr Town now, have just been promoted over Newport County, so that should tell you something. Bognor Regis Town and Lowestoft going up with them with 244 points. Yes, lads. I don't think there's a single former Premier League side, and by former I mean like at the start of the save, even in the Championship. Not that there was any in the Premier League either, because West Brom weren't one of those either, but there's not even any like former Championship sides, I don't think, in the Championship here. League One, this is where they've got to be, right, presumably. Hitchin have beaten Halifax Town in the final there. Mikulova coming up with 252 points. There's Huddersfield. We found someone we recognise. Port Vale are in there too. Forest Green are actually in League One to go with it. Gateshead finally back down in League One here. Hemel Hempstead Town down there too. I reckon there's got to be one in like the National League, surely. Right, so League Two, Shrewsbury break Crawley in the final there. Portsmouth Morpeth coming up with 270 points. 43 defeats. No wins. Imagine that. A season without winning a single match. Congratulations, you're promoted to League One. Damn, I thought we nearly had someone. Burnley. They technically don't count, though, because they're not actually in the Premier League at the start of this save. Brightlingsea in there as well. National League. There has to be someone in the National League. As Bath beat Margate. That just feels like a normal National League game. And no. Nope. Not even a hint of one of them. As Stevenage had 41 wins in a single season. Came with a record bottom of 108 points. That's an insane year for Stevenage, though. 41 wins. If that was a normal season, they'd have got 125 points in the National League. That's proper like Wrexham and Notts County behaviour. But I wonder if we're going to see any of these teams, you know. Bamber Bridge beat Whitby Town in the National League North. And Everton! We found someone! Everton exist! Ladies and gentlemen, Everton exist. Congratulations to them for still existing at this point. They're the first of these teams that we've seen, and there's not another one in their division at all. Boston United promoted there. Everton actually doing quite well towards the top of it, but not seeing any other. I'm sure I might have missed someone, so do point them out. If you notice anything crazy, do point it out in the comments. I'm very curious. Surely. Braintree beat Bromley, and Bournemouth. Bournemouth do count. Bournemouth do in fact count. Bournemouth and Palace, both in National League South as well. The rest of them, though, have disappeared into the shadow realm, it would seem. Most points in the season, actually, was Dagenham and Redbridge with 224, which is a lot for a 38-game season. Obviously, the fewest points don't really matter. Any interesting records? Fewest wins in a season. Hendon managed 0 that season. Most defeats, Dagenham and Redbridge that same season with 36. But what that does imply is that they did win a match. Cruise what the lowest attendance. Lowest attendance was Canvey Island versus Blythe Spartans in 2058. Imagine 2.2k people at a Premier League game. Biggleswade, however, did manage 45 matches without winning. Is that consecutive? Or is that just coming back up again, I suppose? Dulwich Hamlet didn't even score in 16 matches at one point. Praveen Kelleher of Port Vale managed 24 clean sheets in a single season. When you look at the top scorers, it just kind of... Yeah, I mean, once you get rid of Erling Haaland, Isak and Havertz, it kind of just... sorry, Richarlison of Reading. My apologies. On that topic, Calvert-Lewin, interestingly, still at Everton there. Balogun at Brentford, but then you've got the likes of Pietro Pellegrini at Burton Albion. We'll circle back round in a minute, but I do want to look at some of the big clubs and where they've disappeared to. So Chelsea are... they've probably got quite a good side as well, actually. I don't have the editor switched on, so we can't actually see this information. But there they are. No manager, of course, because they're outside of the playable leagues. They're actually in the English Southern League Premier South. It was quite a stark fall for Chelsea, really. Actually survived in the Premier League for a couple of seasons. Then it was straight down from the Championship, League One, League Two. Stayed in League Two for a couple of years, impressively actually. And then sort of actually started, they had an 8th place, which means they actually got so bad that they were able to climb up a little bit. Then they got worse again, straight into the regional divisions by the early 2040s, and have really only done one season back in the National League South ever since then. And they did so well that they got relegated again. Manchester United, on the other hand, this one is very intriguing to me. They actually do have a manager, Charlie Pinkerton. Currently, look at the graph. Graph's just kind of like, God, it's like an Enron stock graph. 2028, they're in League Two. They reached the Conference League final while they were in League Two. That's an impressive feat, but also they stayed in the Premier League for a few seasons as well at the very start. I'm guessing Man City were the biggest casualty in this. All the way down to the National League North, though, by 2030, season after season, did a couple of seasons back in National League North, surprisingly. And interestingly, it was so bad during their first season that they actually nearly got promoted. That's kind of impressive that they were able to be that bad. It's going about as well as it's going for Manchester City, who also find themselves in that same division. It's just like the division of lost toys. They're still considered rich, remarkably. City just went, wow, they just disappeared. They just went Premier League, Championship, League One, League Two, National League North, gone. Never seen again. Within 7 years, they disappeared off the face of the earth. As for Liverpool, they're actually in a different division, the Ryman League Division 1 North, which actually somehow feels even lower, incredibly. I do love how, like, I type in Arsenal, and they've sort of become so irrelevant to the game now that it's like, are you sure you didn't mean Arsenal Tula? Do you mean Le Arsenal? Which is presumably what Arsene Wenger called them when he first joined. They're not even showing up as there they are. But yeah, very similar story for Arsenal. In fact, Arsenal disappeared at the exact same rate that Manchester City did, just down in 6 years, gone, and never to be seen from again. Incredibly, weren't good enough to be relegated in some of these seasons here, and did survive quite a lot longer than I would have expected. Came back a couple of times as well, just to rear their heads to immediately disappear again there. I'm sure there's all sorts of things that you'd want to look through in this save file. There's a load, my brain is just kind of blanking at things to look at currently, but don't worry. If you do find anything interesting in the save file, do let me know in the comments. I'd be very interested to hear it. And, well, not really, actually, as it happens. Not particularly. Although, when you look at the teams that their players play for, all of the best players do not play for English sides. Shocker. Imagine that. I guess their youth rank's just kind of holding them tight there, but they have been up as high as 6th in the last 10 years, so they're certainly not fallen off too much, but I do want to see who their top players play for. This should be funny as hell. So, not a single one plays in England. Like, not even one dude. A couple of guys at Barca there, a couple of guys at Bayer Leverkusen, Feyenoord, Hertha. The usual suspects. Also, dude at Palmeiras, Sean Lucas has just gone, you know what, I fancy a bit of Brazil. In case you're wondering about who the highest reputation team is, it's currently Grays Athletic. Them and Redditch have the highest reputation, but none of them have got beyond 2 stars in terms of their current reputation, which is a sign of the times. What's even more a sign of the times is the distinct lack of, well, any of the more established teams. I mean, Warrington actually still have an alright reputation here. Notable lack of, say, I don't know, Manchester United and co. There's West Ham. They've got local representation. They're a small local club, West Ham, obviously. If you're interested in the Euros, England have managed to win 3 of them, despite all of this. Scotland into a final there too, which is pretty bloody impressive, if you ask me. As for the World Cup, it's a pretty similar story. Not much has really changed here. Not that there would be a lot of changes, but England still managed to win a World Cup despite all of this turmoil. The real victims have, of course, been the English sides, none of whom have won a European trophy in probably the last, 35 years. If any trophies they got were in that first few years of the save, while they were still a little bit decent, with Manchester United famously reaching a Conference League final while playing in League Two. So it actually didn't take very long for Boreham Wood to win the FA Cup in season, season 8? Bournemouth also picked one up, but then it just disappeared after that. I think by this point, a lot of the massive sides were already completely gone from the Football League, and as a result, it gave some space for teams like Boreham Wood, but they beat Brentford in the finals. Carabao Cup's a pretty similar story, Farsley winning it in 2032. Brentford, good lord, they got to a lot of finals, just couldn't quite win the damn thing before disappearing into the ether, along with everybody else. Stockport won a few of them in there too. Manchester City did win the Papa John's trophy, though, in 2026, which is an important one. I think they'll be very pleased with that. Villa came second in it there. Blackburn managed to win it all the way back as far as there. Few for Ipswich. Blackburn won it in 2055 as well. I'd say out of all the teams, they're probably the most interesting. They stayed in the Championship for ages, then did several seasons in the Premier League, actually being trash every single year. Back in the Championship, back in the Premier League, and honestly, they were in the Championship until 9 years ago and have now finally migrated their way back down the highway, getting relegated basically every single season. I don't know how that really happened. They just got struck by the goodness of good players for once, I suppose. But there we have it. I know this has been a very strange video. I like to do weird stuff from time to time. It's fun. I enjoy it, and hopefully we've learned something along the way. Not entirely sure what that will possibly be. So if you have enjoyed it, drop a like. That'd be fabulous. I'd really appreciate it. Drop a subscribe if you're brand new to the channel and want more weird stuff like this. I've got another World Cup video coming up soon as well, and another agent video. All kinds of cool stuff coming up. So yeah, I'll see you guys very soon. Head over to stream and we can chat about this absolute madness. I'll see you soon. Hold your gun. Capybara. Bye-bye.